What is up? My name is Matt Workman, and for those of you that do not know, I am the developer of CineTracer, and in this video we're going to be going over CineTracer version 0.5, and this update requires a little bit of explaining, hence the kind of like intro face cam for this video. So for some kind of like big picture context, I have been making CineTracer for about 2 years. It's been in public beta early release for about 1 year. And it turns out that the framework that I wrote for the game 2 years ago wasn't very good. And I've just been kind of adding features and changing things, but it came to the point with development where I wanted to do certain things, but the overall system was designed just not well enough to grow, basically. And for the last 3 months, I have been reprogramming and redesigning it so that I can do the things I want to do today and to make room for the features that will be coming in the future. I've basically gotten better at programming. I have a better design knowledge for this type of software, and I had to kind of gut the program to get it to do what I wanted. So one of the main things you'll see in this update is that all of the maps are gone except for the flat map. And that's going to feel pretty crazy, but we have something that is going to replace it and that in time will be even better, and that is prefabs. And we'll be looking explicitly at what that means in this video, but yeah, all the maps are gone. To explain a tiny bit more about why that specifically had to happen is that when I first started designing this game, I had to rely on third-party assets or 3D models, textures, materials. So almost all of the levels and the props and the things that you'll see, I didn't make those myself. I was able to use third-party stuff like it's basically like stock photos and videos for video games. I relied on that stuff really heavily because if I had to make that back then, this game never would have come out. So I designed this in the early days using a lot of third-party stock stuff, and with it, I was able to design the system that controls it, that brings it all together. Moving forward now, the actual thing that's holding the game back in a lot of ways is those assets, and this is, to my understanding, a pretty normal part of development, is that you use stand-ins, you use block out pieces and whatnot from wherever just to get something on the screen. But at a certain point, the project gets to the point where you need to replace those things with things that are specifically made for that system. And this is for performance so that it can run better, which we have pretty poor performance overall. It's very unoptimized, but we are starting down the road of optimizing. So this will start to work better and better on lower end systems. And if you have a really fast computer like I do, I'm running a 2080 Ti for the developer station, it will run even better. So that's something that's going to start to happen. For the Mac users, it's already going to be a little bit faster, which I'll address in a second. And we're basically going to be replacing everything that's third-party with stuff that we're making. This first update right here is going to feel like a content cut, so it's kind of like 2 steps back to go forward, but sometimes that has to happen, and that's this update. I just wanted to give like a face cam explanation of this, not just like, Steam comments or Instagram comments, whatever. Like, this is what's happening. I've spent 3 months of every day for 3 months making this happen. It's been a lot of work for me, and I understand that for a lot of older users, it feels like a content cut, but we're going to be bringing it back even better, and hopefully you'll be able to build stuff yourself. That's like the main reason. So before we jump right into it, for the Mac users, what happened is that Apple Mac OS Catalina came out in between, in the middle of this production cycle that I was in. So I wasn't able to update everything to make it work for Catalina then, but it should work now. To my understanding, both the Windows and Mac versions are 64-bit, so that wasn't the issue. If you're on a Mac and you're using Mac OS, which you are, you should make sure that you have the Steam 64-bit client, which I think you have to like uninstall Steam and then make sure you install the 64-bit one. That's not me. I'm not doing anything. This is Apple dropping 32-bit support for apps. I'm doing the same thing I always do. You need to make sure you're on that. And I went back on Steam and I basically had to check a couple things and tell Steam that I am using a 64-bit binary, etc. So it should work. This still isn't live. I'm about to make it live after this video, but that's what happened with Mac OS, and hopefully it's better now. So that wraps up this little intro. I'll have put in the description below the timestamp to skip it. And let's jump into version 0.5 and check out how it works now. It's very different. So welcome to CineTracer version 0.5. Right up front, your old save files will not open. You'll click on them and they will do nothing. That's because this is like a completely different game. The system doesn't recognize these anymore. If you want to open these and continue to work on your older projects, you can go to the beta on Steam. You can right click it, go to properties, go to the 0.34 beta, and you can open up your old files, and you can always come back to the main update after that. This is for people that are in production with the old version. You can keep doing that. Things are pretty much the same over here. Academy is new, which we're not going to go over. Go ahead and give it a try if you want. I'm actually not going to make a video on that. It's like so alpha, but I wanted to put it out there for people that want to test this. We're going to go right into a new project. Same situation here. I'm going to say 0.5 YouTube, something like that. These are me doing lots and lots of testing of the game beforehand. We're going to go OK, and we're going to boot right in. We're not choosing a map. We're not choosing a character. That stuff will slowly be coming back, but again, this is a major rewrite. So what you'll see immediately is that we are in third person, so that's very different from the last update, and you're going to see a different UI. Something that's important right out of the gate is bottom left. It says Y to go to editor. Hit Y. You want to get really familiar with that, and now you're in editor mode, and the controls are at the bottom. You have to hold right click to move your mouse, and you have your mouse. And you can go up here and do these things. You can change the time of day. You want to double click these still. I haven't updated that. Change your time of day and tweak them in the settings if you're so daring to see what's going on behind the scenes somewhat. And that is a big update right there. So now there are only these two modes, character and editor. And character only has third person for now. We'll see what happens. So at the bottom right, you're going to see the hotbar. This is completely new. And you're going to see QERT. These are the top row letters for your keyboard if you're QWERTY. And those are going to be your tools. And then you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is all one tool set called the build tool. And we're going to go over how that works right now. So it's still the same WASD. You move your mouse, you jump with space, you double jump, and you will fly. You hold control, you'll go down, double space to end flying. That is all the same. So what we're going to do now is hit 1. I hit 1, and we pull out a light meter, and that's what we'll be using for now. And if I move around, you'll see that this floor piece is one selected in the bottom right, and that it's now previewing it in front of me. And this is how a lot of modern video games will handle building. And you'll see that it's actually snapping to this world grid here. So it's perfectly snapping in there for you. You don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is move around and then look in the right direction. And if you want this piece to stay there, you'll see on the left, that's where the hotkeys are going to go from now on. It says that left click is drop, which I think it should actually be place. But we're going to left click. And if I move back here, you'll see that that piece has stayed there and we have a new one. So this is the build tool. It says that at the bottom. And what you can do is quickly go like this. I'm going to hold shift to run. And I've placed 3 of them there. If I'm done building, I don't want this thing anymore. I can hit Q. And we go back to the viewfinder tool, which will eventually be a camera, which we haven't finished yet, but this is going to be a camera that you're basically always walking around with. For now, it's a really safe place to get back to if you want to clear out of any of the other modes, because you basically can't do anything with the viewfinder out. So next I'm going to hit 2, and this brings out a wall. And you'll see that this is snapping as well. Everything kind of snaps where it should be, more or less. And so I'm going to place a wall here by left clicking. I'm going to look over here, left click. And you can even go up and left click, turn, left click. I'm going to hit Q to get out. So this is the new gameplay loop for building. And if you've ever played Fortnite or Ark or even Minecraft to some degree, which we'll be looking at in just a bit, this should be pretty familiar. And if you've never done this before, this is how a lot of games work. So you're kind of playing a game now. Next, we're going to hit 3. And this is a block, right? So this is very Minecraft. And it's a little bit weird how you place it because this will just float up. There's basically an invisible grid for each one of these objects, and it's going to help you align everything much faster. So we're perfectly snapping in these cubes here, and in a video game, in development, they would call this a block out, a white box or a gray box, and most video games start out by actually designing the levels like this, just keeping it really simple, and you're just blocking out space. So very quickly, we've made 2 walls and a floor, and this brings us to our next tool, which is E. So Q is viewfinder, currently does nothing, but I would come back here to be safe. E is your select tool. And now you can left click things like you could in the older CineTracer versions. Now it's specifically a tool. So if you're nostalgic for old CineTracer, just go to E. This is the select tool. I can now left click to select things. And now, if I want to grab this object, you'll see on the left it says grab. If I hit G, this will now enter us back into this mode, like this. And if I want to put it down, I left click again, and it actually deselects the object now. That's the new behavior. So again, I can left click things, and if I hit X or delete, it will delete them. I can select again, and I can hit C, and it will duplicate it, and then immediately start it moving again, left click. So this is kind of the older workflow of working, still completely valid. Now at this point, I'm going to go back into editor and show you that the game still works pretty much the same this way. So I'm going to switch to editor, like that. And this is more traditional, like how a video game editor would work, or Maya, something like that. You have your mouse, you can left click things. You have the gizmos that are still just as buggy as they ever were. I would like to update those at some point. But these are actually going to default you onto a snapping grid that is going to allow you to continue to manipulate things in kind of a calmer way like this, a little more detail. And if you want to turn off the grid snapping, you can see over on the left it says L. So I'm going to hit L, it says snap is off, and now it'll just like kind of infinitely move. But it will be tricky to get it back on the grid. From here you can hit G, and it will move sort of like it used to in the old game. Like this, it'll stick to your mouse, and if you hit L, it will snap it back onto that grid. So you can kind of get it close in many cases, and if not, you can use the arrows. So this is pretty much the big update here. There's going to be a lot more I'm going to show you, but there are now different ways of moving around as far as the editor mode. Editor, you get your mouse back, and now there's new tools. So speaking of new tools, let's hit R, and we have the paint tool. And what it says is that if you left click, you're going to color something. So I'm going to left click this cube like this. So we've colored these green. And if I hate this color, I can right click and reset it. So it's now very quick and kind of fun and loose to start to art direct your scene and change the color and just try different patterns. You don't have to select anything. It's very quick. And if you don't like it, no big deal. Just right click everything, and we'll probably do like hold down right click eventually. If you want to, I'm going to paint these green. And if you want to change the color now, we're going to hit O, and you're going to get tool options. Your mouse comes out, and we're going to choose something like this. And you'll see that the paint gun has actually changed color to reflect that. I'm going to paint these cubes here. And this is how we're going to apply color. This is how we're going to apply dirt and apply a whole bunch of things coming in the game. They need to be tools like this. That's just the easiest way for me to implement them, and I think the easiest way for you guys to understand what's happening. So say I don't like this pink, and I want to get back to this green. What I can do is I can hold Control, and I can sample the green back. And then I'm painting with green again. Again, if you look at the tool itself, it's turning the color that you're painting. If I sample white, that's actually what reset does. So I can right click, or I can paint it back white. That is how you're going to reset. So that is the paint tool. So next, very important, if you don't like these objects down there, you want something else, you can hit tab. This is still the same. And you'll see that if I left click this stuff, nothing happens anymore, right? I'm left clicking like, this is broken, like what's going on? What we do now in the character mode specifically is that we click and drag and we drop it into our hotbar. This is very Minecraft, very Fortnite, very video gaming here, but it's actually going to be much faster once you do this. I've been using this for quite a while, and it is much faster. What am I going to grab here? Let's actually go and skip to a prop. The props go in there as well, and I'm going to grab this trash can here, and I'm going to bring it right there. And this works the same way for the actors. It will be super buggy, however, if you use it on these characters. The blocking actors do not like being spawned in this way. I haven't blocked it yet. You can try it. It's going to be buggy. You want to spawn these from editor. Before we do the hotbar thing, let me just show you spawning from editor. I'm going to drop out here. When you're doing lighting specifically or working with these actors, you're going to want to spawn them from the editor. So I click on them here, and they just drop out of the ground like that. And for lighting, this is still the preferred method. This is actually a new stand from, what's it called? From Academy mode, it got built. And so this is still working the old way. And if you want to connect these, you can only really do this. It's going to say F. So let me go over this again. You select the light, you hover the stand, it says attach over there. You hit F, and now you're attached, and you have your UIs out like this. This only really works in editor mode, right? So if you're doing that kind of stuff, you want to be an editor. And if you're dealing with these characters, you also want to be an editor because it requires having your mouse. We're not going to go over this. This is the same as before. I'm going to jump back into here. What we want to look at now is spawning cameras. This works fine like this. You can just hit 1. There's a camera. You could make another one if you wanted. I'm going to hit E to select and delete that one. And now I'm going to hit 2, and we're spawning the trash can. So this is actually much faster. You can rotate this while spinning. So it's actually much faster to place them like this. And an even more interesting way to place things is if you hit T now. This is our work in progress physics tool. So now it says force grab. And if you left click certain things, mostly props and smaller objects, it'll bring it towards you and you'll kind of be carrying it around. And now if you left click, it says launch. It will shoot it on the ground and it'll simulate physics for a little bit of time. So in the case that you're wanting to make kind of a mess, this is a great way of doing it. You can just pick these up, shoot them on the ground, and let them kind of fall naturally, let physics kind of take over. And this is actually setting the stage for a couple other things we'd like to do in the future as well, where we need to be able to essentially shoot things. If I hit O, which is your tool options, it'll be different depending on what tool you have. We can change its firepower, and you can also tell it how long you want it to simulate physics after you shoot it. So if you set it for a long time, it'll roll around for a while. You won't be able to touch it. If you set it to a short time, it's going to freeze in the air, most likely. So I'm going to pick up this trash can. I'm going to shoot it over there, and it's going to land where it lands. And it naturally places itself like this. And this is actually really helpful because it's kind of hard to place them on the ground like that using the traditional method. That one's going to land up on its end like that. That's pretty funny. So we're going to hit Q, and that is the basics of the new building system. However, actually building things is much more nuanced. And this brings the question of where did the maps go and what are we going to do instead? So let's look at what we're going to do instead of having maps. This is going to be better in the long term. Right now on this first update, it's going to feel kind of bad because we're not going to have as many options, but I'm going to work really hard to try to get us even more options than we used to have. So here's the kind of mess we made. I'm going to hit E and just quickly delete everything. It is kind of a pain to delete. You have to click and then hit X, click X, but it's not too bad. So we're going to delete all of these pieces just to make a little bit of room and this camera. And what we're going to do now is build a quick set. And if you look in your hotbar, by default, on this first update, you're going to have a house there. So if I hit 5, you'll see that it spawned an entire house. And then if I spin around, it's going to go more or less where I want. And if I walk around, it'll actually move. So we're going to left click to place it. And there's actually another one already. We're going to hit Q to get rid of that. And we have an entire house built already. And if we fly around real quick, we see that there's a sidewalk around it, there's some telephone poles, there's some work in progress grass, and more or less an entire house here. And unlike the old levels, we can actually come in here and we can delete this. And this is actually made up of all the parts that you have in your inventory. So we'll do a quick tour in here. This is a new type of part we're making. It's called a room. It's a pre-made kitchen here. It's not very high detail yet, but it snaps perfectly in place there. We'll see that there's a new staircase, and it's perfectly snapping in to allow you to do levels. And there's a couple different wall pieces as well. And very new to this system here, we actually have a roof like this. These are called dormers, where you can look out here. And you can actually go in the attic. So this is all very new for the residential set. So this is how maps are going to more or less work now. We hit tab, we go to building. These are now prefabs. So we used to have a house set, but you could never edit it. You could never change it. You couldn't really change the lighting very much. They weren't very useful and they were bad for performance. Now we'll load that entire house into this level. We have a warehouse here with a sidewalk. We have a little industrial park, and we have a highway. And let's look at all of them real quick. The house we've already looked at, but we'll bring it back. And let me show you how quick it is to assemble a city pretty much using this workflow. I'm going to turn around here. Placing this is still a little weird. We do have our little save bunny over there, so we're going to kind of plow him in a second. We're going to run right over him with this stuff here. I'm going to hit 2, and you'll see that we get this whole set. And this whole set is actually snapping perfectly to the world grid, like this. And this is going to mean that you can connect them together, and you can continue to build on them. So I'm going to left-click this one, hit Q. And if you run over, we see we have our road here, which is pretty new sidewalks as well. We'll run in here, and the big difference now with this set is that we actually have the workings of a proper framing system, which if you don't care about architecture, it's not that big a deal, but if you're a rigger, this is how a lot of buildings are put together in Brooklyn for sound stages, and you're going to be rigging off of this stuff in the future. And again, this stuff is all built with the system, and we'll show you how to do that in the future. And what you can do now is, because this stuff is all modular, I can hit 3, and I have another variation of this right here. I'm going to hit click, left click, and now we've connected these two sets together. Now, this sidewalk is a corner, not exactly the right one, but you can change that. And you can see that we're going to start to tile these all together, and you can build your own city. And I'm going to say it once again, all this stuff is modular, and you can adjust it. You can move it around. You can delete it. You can just use the parts that you want, and only the parts that you want. And this is much better for performance. And again, the modularity part of this is a big deal. So what I'm going to do here to show you how this can be modified rather quickly, I'm going to delete all these pieces out, and we're going to go into our building system, and I'm going to grab something from the urban set, which is this staircase here. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to grab the floor from the commercial floor. These are a little different. I'm going to do a video right after this explaining this in more detail. We're going to hit 3. And now I can just start to fill this in perfectly, right? This is all part of the grid system. Like that. We perfectly filled this with cement. And then I'm going to hit 1, and I'm going to put a staircase like that. And this staircase is designed to perfectly match this height. We're going to walk right up it. I'm going to hit 3 again. And we are continuing to extend this set. Because everything's on the world grid, this is now trivial. I'm going to hit 2, and this is kind of our low wall here. And I'm just going to run, and I'm going to make a border around this little building. And this is to illustrate that we're using a combination of prefabricated sets, which is basically this warehouse, the beginning of this structure, this road. We brought that all in, but then we can continue to modify it perfectly on this grid. And I could turn this building into this one relatively quick if I wanted to. So that's how this is working now. You'll be able to design your own sets, and we're going to be building more and more prefabs. The last thing I want to look at here is 4. And I'm going to change this so it's a little bit easier to tell where it is you're snapping, but that should line it up. So we have made this long kind of city road here, and it's all ending now on this bridge. And this staircase, if you remember, is the staircase that we brought out from over there. There's just 2 of them here, right? So once you get the hang of this, you're going to be able to build bridges like this, staircases, as big as you want, relatively quickly. This frame here, this I-beam, is the same I-beam that's in the warehouse, and this is by design. And this allowed me to make a pretty quick kind of like overpass, like if this was a highway. This is actually kind of me remaking the city set that we had before. So before we leave this tutorial, this is a lot to take in all at once, and we haven't even come close to showing how the building system works. Is I'm going to build a quick scene here, and I'm going to show you one of the most requested features that we've had for quite a while. I'm actually going to change this to her, because this is how I made it on one of the cover art that I made for the game. We're going to place her there, switch to 3, and I'm going to put him there. And I'm going to show you something new about the camera system. It's pretty awesome. I don't really know why it took me this long to update it, but we have it now. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to scroll in. Zoom in, and we're going to hit a frame something like this. And then I'm going to hit F to get out. It's now F instead of E. And say we want to start to art direct the scene or light it. Before we had to jump back and forth between the cameras and this view. Now you can hit M. And you now have a permanent view of that camera while you walk around. You'll see that this camera has a little Wi-Fi signal. That means that this is the one transmitting. So if you have multiple cameras, you'll know it's that one. And what's cool now is that you can actually run around in the background and be in the shot. And more importantly, I think the workflow that makes the most sense is to switch to editor, be near the camera like this, and now you can start to art direct while looking through the camera. So I'm going to go in here, and because again we are in editor mode, this works the way it used to. I'm going to grab something like this fence. And now I can place it while looking through the view. So this is way better than it was before. This is super helpful. Worth the rewrite alone. A lot of restructuring happened, and this was very easy to implement once I changed how the game worked from the basic framework. We can place this car more intelligently. We don't have to guess. We kind of know like if it's going to go there or something like this. And then, really importantly for lighting, it's much simpler to light this scene. So I'm going to grab a couple practicals. I'm going to grab this overhead light here. I'm going to come down. I'm going to hold shift now, and that's going to stick it to the ceiling like that. Spin it. And I'm going to change now the time of day over here. We're going to go to twilight. Double click that so it's kind of dark. click on this light again, and then while still looking through the camera, I can tweak the lighting. So this is really great. We're going to go like full cyberpunk here, maybe towards the red. Oh yeah, the red's pretty cool like that. And you can change everything you want while still looking through the camera. So that wraps up this update video. Thanks for checking it out. I'm going to be making a couple more videos specifically on building because, you know, it's new, and I want to explain the design a little bit further for people that want to be able to build more and maybe they're kind of confused or don't know where to start. I'm going to try to make some videos on here's how you make some basic buildings and here's how you start to build in a bigger way. And these tools might seem foreign and kind of like, oh, it's like, you know, why am I learning this like weird system? But what I've actually done is I've taken the way that the game industry and the VFX industry to a certain extent, how they approach designing modular levels. That's exactly what we're doing in this like video game app. I'm basically streamlining and making it easy, and I think it's easy and kind of fun to execute this type of design. And this is the same thing that you would do as a video game level designer, and to some degree for visual effects as well. And overall, it's the same concepts of architecture and composition that you would do on set as well if you were a set designer. So I'm going to be going through some of those things. I know not everyone in the community here is like a production designer or like a video game level designer. It's stuff I've been learning too. And I just want to put out more content that kind of explains how that works. So in the future updates, I can't like promise anything like legally what's going to be happening, but my intent for the next updates is to continue to add new pieces into this building system so that we can build classrooms and like, you know, basketball fields and have the props that properly fit those sets and that they come pre-assembled as prefabs for people that don't want to build them themselves. So that's what I'm focusing on now. Likely after that, I'll move on to the actors and characters. We've had many iterations of how actors work in the game, and there's going to be another one. I'm going to keep trying to make it better. And then after that, we kind of loop back around, and cameras and lights need a little bit of TLC, and we're going to just keep pushing. But the main focus for me in the next couple months here are going to be able to... the main thing I'm going to be focusing again is bringing back those older maps that we had, but building them better using the new systems like the subway and different types of buildings, and even exteriors where we have deserts and stuff like that. I'm planning on doing that modularly now, and so that you can customize everything. That's like one of the main goals. So long video, big update, had to make this. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.